What is going on, guys? We are back with another episode of our Pokemon TCG Pocket, and in today's episode, guys, I actually wanted to go over a kind of a different video for you guys. Normally what I've done is showcased one deck in a video, but honestly, like, I'm going away for a week for work purposes, and then I come back and there's only like a week away until there's a new set again. So what I decided to do is we did a ranking, tier list of the trainer cards in the previous video, and then we did a live stream where we got ourselves into the Great Ball. As you can see, I am now in Ultra Ball, and I have a 65% win ratio in here, so I had a pretty bad stream with you guys on there where I was like hovering around like 40, like I was a Pokeball tier, like it was painful. But I really kind of figured it out, turned it around, and I think that I'm doing pretty well now. So honestly, as far as the ratings go and the season rewards and things like that, one of the things that I did want to talk to you guys about is like what the tier rankings are and kind of how they kind of affect you. Apparently when the new season drops, we got this off of a Japanese X post basically, but basically you're going to drop down 4 ranks every season. So now that I'm in Ultra Ball 1, I'm going to go back to Great Ball 1, and I'm going to have to work my way up. Now, the biggest difference is the amount of games that it takes you to get up these tiers, right? It's going to take, at a 55% win rate, I'm pretty sure that it's going to take 200 games for me to get into Master Ball, at a 55% win rate. Whereas here, and the difference really, right? Like, it's literally like 20 hourglasses, which is like, I think like $3-4 Canadian. So it's like, realistically, like, I just don't, I'm okay like playing Ultra Ball to get the ranking, but I'm not really okay with, I'm not really in love with the idea of playing 200 games for a dollar worth of currency, right? But when you drop 4 rankings, you're going to end up down here, and it's much easier to climb Great Ball than it is to be sitting there in Ultra Ball and playing the 200 games to climb. Like, I work full time other than this, so it's really difficult for me to do that. But so I have a little bit of experience in what the tiers are offering, and hope that can help you guys kind of rank up and get better with your guys' deck as well. So what I wanted to do today was I'm actually going to go over every deck that I've been using. I have 9 decks here that we're going to go over, and we're going to start in Pokeball tier and kind of where I think the decks sort of kind of fall, and where you could stop playing them. I think all of these decks here are all playable in Pokeball, Great Ball, but there are some decks that really after Great Ball, they're just not, they're not it, right? Like, even in Great Ball, they were not fantastic decks. But the first one that I want to look at is Articuno. Articuno is a very, very cool card. This is 18 Trainer Articuno that specifically I'm looking at today. But 18 Trainer Articuno is a 140 HP Pokemon. So it does just beat Arceus. It does just beat Giratina damage. And yeah, so it doesn't live it without tape when you're going for red, but at the very least it has the HP stat that it's okay. Ice Wing is a pretty solid move for 2 energy, does 40 damage. Well, not, shouldn't say solid, it's a move for 40 damage, but the biggest difference when you're looking at 18 trainer things is that overall, this 40 ramp on 2 energy into 80 ramp plus 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon on 3 ends up doing more damage than Palkia does over a number of turns, right? So Palkia is kind of limited to 90 damage over 3 turns, where Articuno is like hitting 150 over 3 turns, and then obviously turn 4 you have that potential to do 150. But at that point, you're still doing 80 every turn, and you're not losing the energies that you're committing. So, this is kind of why I prefer Articuno in this situation, but Let's take a look at the actual deck itself. Articuno is being played with 2 potions, 2 Pokeballs, 2 Giant Cape, 1 Rocky Helmet, 2 Pokeballs, 2 Misty, 2 Sabrina, 2 Cyrus, 1 Mars, and 2 Irida. So I want to kind of go over each of the decks and why I have the cards that I have in them, and hopefully this is kind of something that you guys can kind of take something away from, even if you don't agree with it, just to see what other people's maybe perspective is. But basically, for me anyways, the big one for me is that the potions are really, really valuable in 18 Trainer because you're running an EX Pokemon. It's worth 2 points. You do have to be strategic about when you're going for healing, but having healing is very, very important. I think it's a mandatory in any 18 Trainer deck. Pokeball, despite the fact that you're only running 2 Pokemon, it is extremely important that you find your second Articuno very quickly. Otherwise, you lose the game and you've only given up 2 points, right? So very, very important that you get it. It's worth having to have a dead card in your hand to make sure that you get the Articunos that you need. Giant Cape adds 20 HP to your total HP pool, making it 160. This is the benchmark that you need to be able to survive a Giratina attack. This is what you need to survive Arceus, even with red. And it just keeps you out of a range of a lot of things, although I am also running 1 Rocky Helmet, because if you're playing a deck that isn't going to be one of the most meta cards, the extra damage is actually pretty useful and can turn Articuno's kind of like weaker overall attack into something that's a little bit more palatable. So, you know, kind of makes Blizzard feel like 100 damage, right? It makes Ice Wing feel like a 60 damage attack sometimes, and so I really do like that approach to it and having the extra. You could switch this out with a different card if you wanted to. Like, you could very easily put in like a Pokemon Center Lady, and then you don't have to really deal with like poison or status or anything like that. Or you could put in like a Team Rocket Grunt kind of deal. I tend to choose between Mars and Team Rocket Grunt in a lot of situations. So, you know, maybe the Pokemon Center Lady is the better pick, but you can kind of pick and choose, right? You could even put a red in here, put a Giovanni, right? Do something like that. 2 Professor's Research, that is pretty standard. Obviously, the main draw to playing 18 trainer cards with water is that you have access to Misty, which does let you attack on the first turn and potentially do 80 damage before your opponent's normal. Like, you would normally not have energy that turn, and you could potentially do 80 damage and win that turn. So, it's huge if you can get a Misty off. If you get it turn 1, like, that's a big, big deal. For the latter specifically, I really think that 2 Sabrina and 2 Cyrus are really good at disrupting your opponents. Because you're not running any other Pokemon, you have to be proactive about these disruptions. If you're playing it more for other purposes, you could drop it down to 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, and then you'd have plenty of room for more Pokemon Center Ladies or whatever else you want. Mars, I think, is really good in 18 Trainer, especially with an EX Pokemon, because you're going to get the first knockout, and then you're going to sit there and be like, hey, you're only going to have 1 card left in your hand, and potentially you can slow your opponent down, or you can, like, kind of secure a victory because they're going to have less resources to heal their Pokemon that you can finish off with Articuno. And of course, the last one is Irida. Irida is just the best healing option for water types. You know, Pokemon Center Lady only does 30, where Irida does 40, so I ended up choosing the higher healing option in this deck, but that's sort of kind of why I chose Articuno. I think this deck does really, really well in Pokeball tier. It actually is fairly serviceable in Great Ball tier. Like, you can play it, it's no problem. But as you start playing the less bots and more people, you're going to see that there are a lot of options to be able to handle 18 trainer decks. And realistically, like, there already is like basically like a 17 trainer deck at the top of the tier list here. So 18 trainer Articuno anyways is a card that you don't actually need any of the new cards to play it, and I think that's why I value it in this slot. So moving on to our second deck, we have Weavile. Weavile here is a 140 HP EX Stage 1 with 1 energy commitment for Scratching Nails. Now, Scratching Nails does 40 more damage if your opponent has prior damage. Obviously, you pair this generally with Darkrai, so that they do the 20 chip. You can either don up an energy, or you just had the energy on it already. Now you're doing 70 damage. Now you're doing 70 damage from Weavile and 20 chip damage from Darkrai in the back. This is a very aggro strategy. The goal of this is to win fast, very much like Articuno. The raw damage isn't there, so you have to get this set up very, very quickly. But this is the deck for this. This deck is completely weak to grass, so you do need to be paying attention to that. Meowscarada is a massive threat to this deck. You probably just auto lose to Meowscarada unless you can knock out both Sprigatitos before they really get set up. And then obviously like Exeggutor decks would really punish the deck. But the purpose of this deck is to be very, very hyper aggressive, right? You're setting up a Darkrai on the bench, you're putting the 1 energy onto Weavile, and you're trying to use Scratching Nails for 70 damage. Is basically what you're trying to do. This is a very aggro deck, so you want to be very, very fast with your damage, and really try to make sure that everything is set up as fast as possible. So 2 Pokeballs is pretty standard. We're rocking 2 Rocky Helmet in this one. We're trying to activate Weavile's extra damage as often as possible. And although Giant Cape does allow you to live Arceus a hit, this deck is supposed to be the one on the offensive, and so I think that Rocky Helmet works a little bit better. Professor's Research is your auto draw 2 cards, so pretty standard. Because of how hyper aggressive that we're trying to be, I've chosen to run 2 Sabrina in this deck. We're choosing 1 Leaf. Leaf is to get a bad Giratina, I keep mixing them up. A bad Darkrai lead you can switch into to Weavile, and then kind of be able to continue on with your play. Double Cyrus, again with the Rocky Helmet, with the chip from Darkrai. You should be able to activate Cyrus pretty quickly into a game because someone will switch or you'll get a knockout and you'll do some type of chip that'll make it worth it. Especially playing double Sabrina, you can really force your opponent to switch something out, and now you have the Cyrus for the game, and you can do different things with that. But because you're trying to be so aggressive, we're running 4. We're just kind of pushing the limits, right? Like you could be playing capes in this if you wanted to. You could be playing potions. You could be playing more reds. You could be playing, anything you really wanted, right? But because of how aggressive we're being, I've chosen this path. Dawn allows you to put an energy onto Darkrai, do the 20 chip damage, then switch that energy onto Weavile. Weavile attacks for the 70 right away. So that's a very, very good turn 1 strat early if you can get everything online pretty much immediately. 1 Mars, we're running all EX Pokemon, and so, the ability, once your opponent knocks out 1 thing, you can knock your opponent down to 1 card in their hand. And then, of course, the 1 red is so that we can hit 100 damage or 90 damage, respectively. Darkrai, Weavile. This deck is hyper aggro. If you don't win in the first couple of turns, you probably lost the game. That is sort of kind of how this particular deck functions. But otherwise, it's a very fun deck to play. You can punish a lot of the weird decks that you see in the lower tiers. Before you start seeing it be all meta cards in the top tiers. Even if you're not playing on the ladder, right? This is a strong deck for random queues. But in tournaments, this deck is also kind of middle. So, the next deck that I wanted to look at is Gallade. Now, Gallade is a deck that I think is usable in Ultra Ball tier. This is where this deck is going to shine. Realistically, though, I find that even from the top players, even for the content creators that I'm watching, we're kind of just seeing where tournaments are falling. Gallade has been slipping a lot lately because Gallade is unfortunately running into the issue where it's weak to Giratina and with red, it's getting one shot without a cape. And the fact that you have to commit a cape when this deck is already trying to run double Hitmonlee, which really wants Rocky Helmet, you just don't have enough space in the deck all the time. And so that's sort of kind of the one problem for Gallade right now. The meta has decided we're tired of Hitmonlee, and so they're finding ways around it. But Gallade at 170 HP is very, very good. You know, 2 energy commitment makes it evolve on curve, even when you're attack on curve, even when you're going first. The fact that its evolutions have a different weakness sometimes can be useful, although in this particular situation, the top deck is a mixture of Dark and Psychic, and unfortunately, this deck is weak to Psychic and Dark for your boss monster, basically. But Energizing Blade is really, really strong. 3 energy commitment does 130. 3 energy commitment by your opponent does 130 damage. To them, Pokemon that have 4 energy commitment do 150. So you are one-shotting things, and that's really, really good. But otherwise, you know, right now it's just that this deck is struggling because it's a 2-stage evolution, right? 2-stage evolutions are notoriously a little bit less consistent because you need more pieces to find. Even though you have extra cards in your deck to help you with it, it's still randomized, right? Pokemon communication is not perfect. But yeah, so here I'll show you what I have for the deck today. We are using this build, which features double Gallade, double Hitmonlee, double Kirlia, 1 Marshadow. We're also rocking with 2 routes. We're using the genetic apex, not genetic apex, the not mythical island, space time smackdown one, whatever it is, so that we have access to the teleporting routes. That does mean that if we do end up going second, we can teleport back with routes into the other one. So I do think this is the better route to go. And then we're rocking 2 Pokeballs, obviously to get out our basics. 1 Pokemon communication. The real dream here is that you can use Hitmonlee, or you can use your second route, Kirlia, whatever, to search and hopefully get your last Gallade that you need, or the last piece that you need for everything you need. So, 3 Pokemon searches basically. We're rocking 1 cape and 1 Rocky Helmet. Basically, even though I said a few moments ago that Hitmonlee really needs Rocky Helmet, Gallade really needs a giant cape to survive Giratina. So, unfortunately, it puts you in this really awkward position where instead of fully supporting your early game with Hitmonlee and Marshadow, you now have to kind of split your commitment and give a thing that Gallade can use to stay alive as well. Which is perfectly fine, right? I mean, the 4 energy commitment does end up knocking out things, and especially with the recoil damage, this also puts it so that even Gyarados really has problems. But ultimately, you know, Gyarados still takes 1 more shot, but the cape actually lets you live hits and do fairly well. So, Professor's Research, again, your draw card. We're rocking 2 Cyrus in this deck because we were playing double Hitmonlee. We know we're attacking the bench, and we know we're attacking the bench often. We should be able to do 30 damage. The whole goal of this is that Hitmonlee is chipping things down, that Gallade can knock things out anyways, so it kind of works into the strategy of being able to pull things forward when we need it for Gallade. 1 Mars. The big thing with this deck is that you're typically letting Hitmonlee go down. Marshadow's revenge killing something. Marshadow's probably getting knocked out, and now you've given up 2 points. Gallade can now come in with only 1 prize left for yourself to lose, and then you can Mars and and so they're stuck with 1 card, and now you have advantage of being able to Cyrus things up, and they really can't heal, and so that's sort of kind of what you're trying to do with this one. This one's a little bit more tight on it, and then 1 red allows you to hit potentially 170 with a 4 energy commitment, so you should be able to knock out Giratina with a cape from full, although it is doing recoil damage, so you should be fine. And then really everything else sort of kind of gets blown back. You know, you get too many heads on a Misty, and now Gyarados is kind of in range with red as well, and so you can kind of target those things well. The next deck that I have for you is Charizard. We're using Genetic Apex Charizard because Genetic Apex Charizard is the only Pokemon in the game that is capable of doing 200 damage. And so just that ability to one-shot things is actually the reason that you really need this card. Being able to attack for 60 on curve as well with 3 energy is pretty good when you can't get anything else going. And then 180 HP is really, really strong. The biggest problem for Charizard as well as Gallade is that it's a 2-stage evolution. And one of the more popular decks in the meta is Gyarados. Gyarados is able to one-shot with red a Charizard. So you do have to be careful about that matchup. But otherwise, Charizard is the nuke for everything. We're not really seeing a ton of Mew, so like Crimson Storm is not like a counter to itself anymore. But overall, the Genetic Apex Charizard is still the way to go. I have been sold a bill of goods that I think I am going to continue to look at. I actually think that the old Charmander is better. I have been switched into believing it, and now I'm going to commit to it. So the reason that I like the old Charmander is that 30 damage is enough to one-shot all of the common grass-type Pokemon with super effective and a Giovanni if you are carrying Giovanni, right? Now this particular deck does not carry Giovanni. However, I do think that it is potentially worth it to knock out 1x speed to put in a Giovanni, or you can take out Potion, put in Giovanni. For those of you who don't really care about Iono, put in Giovanni. Because you're not running that many Pokemon, you could actually drop one communication. That's probably actually one that I'd recommend. But that would be where you could add Giovanni in, and now you can do 160 and knock out like Sprigatito and things like that with a Charmander, which is really, really interesting, right? You're trying to knock out the threat before it becomes the threat to you. So that would be the one change that I would make. Maybe one communication, drop it down for one Giovanni. So that Charmander can knock out Sprigatitos and knock out Execute is what I would say. Also, the 30 damage instead of the 20 also guarantees that you one-shot Magikarp if they get caught with a lead there. So it actually takes your two kind of decks that you really struggle with and actually gives you like an out to them, which I think is really cool. But this Charmeleon is the better one for sure. 2 energy commitment is a good curve upgrade. The old Charizard is still the way to go. We already mentioned it. And of course, Moltres is still the engine for this deck. You can also, if you are looking to take out different cards and have different options, if you're dropping one Pokemon communication for a Giovanni, there's also a case that you could drop and not have Giovanni and also run Dawn. I believe in our sample deck that we kind of talked about when we were doing our deck building video, I included both Dawn and Giovanni into that deck. But basically, you can enable Moltres to be a secondary attacker on its own a lot more efficiently, where this particular build is kind of more all-in Charizard, right? So it sort of kind of depends on how you want to play it, but for this particular build, I think that just going all-in Charizard is the best way that Charizard's going to be successful in the latter side of things. So we're playing one potion. This gives you a little bit of healing on Moltres. Also with a giant cape, which keeps you at 160, which also keeps you out of Arceus range, and all that good stuff. The 2x speeds are designed to be able to switch a bad Charmander lead, or be able to use your Inferno Dance once, use your X speed with in combination with Moltres, with the 1 energy that you've committed, and now you can switch for 1 energy kind of deal. If you wanted to switch out 1 communication and 1 X speed, that works perfectly fine to make it work for you to put the 2 other cards in if you wanted those options. 2 Professor Research, pretty standard. This deck really struggles with consistency, and so Iono is really important just to be able to reset your hand and get the cards you need. And then 1 Sabrina just as a defensive kind of switching option to be able to do what you need. Another deck that is another 2-stage evolution, and we just talked about it, is Meowscarada. Flipping over to the grass side of things, Meowscarada can be played a number of different ways. But the really intriguing thing is that the non-EX Pokemon that for 2 energy commitment can do 130 damage to EX Pokemon. You can bring that up to 150 with red. So there's plenty of options to be very, very aggressive. You know, we've seen this with Beedrill, we've seen this with Exeggutor, we've seen Wigglytuff variants. I personally believe in the Beedrill line the best. The reason is just the cohesiveness of everything being a 1 retreat cost, everything being a low energy commitment, and just ultimately having a secondary attacker that is searchable and can do different things. So, for this deck, we are running the basically a light version of Beedrill. So we're running 1 Beedrill EX, 1 of the new Kakuna, and we're running the old genetic Apex Weedle. Weedle, you don't want to be searching this Weedle for the other one because you only have 1, so you may as well do the 20 damage. Kakuna is very, very strong, 1 energy commitment as well, so it evolves. You can evolve it turn 1, still be able to do your 1 attack. The 20 damage is nothing really to write home about, but the ability to paralyze your opponent is. So it can save you games when you really need it, and then Beedrill can come in. If you can get that on curve and get that going before someone gets a Giratina or an Arceus or whatever online, Beedrill can really just completely stop your opponent from being able to get enough energy, and you'll just win with low little chip damage like that. So Beedrill is a secondary attacker that can be really useful, but your main one is, of course, Meowscarada. The Sprigatito is able to kind of search out other grass-type Pokemon, and so it kind of acts as your Pokemon communication, which is really cool. So we don't actually have to run it in the deck, which gives a little bit more space for other things. 2 Pokeballs, even though Sprigatito does search other grass types, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's searching out basic Pokemon. So you still want to have the ability to get your other Sprigatito and to also get your Weedle. 1 Giant Cape. This is mostly for Meowscarada. This gives it 160 HP, which does keep it out of Arceus range and yada yada. You know, Gyarados, you know, requiring red to now knock you, and it can't even knock you out, right? So, you really get the benefit of, like, people can't use red against you, right? So, 150, 160, like, you're living every hit now, right? So, the 160 keeps you out of range of a lot of things. The Rocky Helmet is really for Beedrill. But it also can be used early game on a Sprigatito as well to do a little bit of chip damage, where Meowscarada is a little bit weak on the damage side, but really this Rocky Helmet can be used on both Beedrill and Sprigatito, kind of punishing your opponent for attacking it, because they are kind of frail. 2 Professor's Research, again, standard, you know, pot agreed for Pokemon. We're playing 1 Erica. I know that a lot of people play 2 Erica with this, but honestly, if you need to play 2 Erica, you're losing the game, right? Simple as that. So what I've decided to do is be a little bit more proactive in other things, and I was able to fit the Rocky Helmet in because of that, right? I was able to fit in, you know, a different card that could help me because of the fact that I'm only running 1 Erica. There's a lot of trades you do in Pokemon TCG Pocket because you only have 20 cards, right? So we're playing 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus. We have 1 offensive switching tool, 1 defensive switching tool if we need it. We're playing 1 Red. Red works wonders when you're playing it with Meowscarada. You can go up to 150 damage, and that knocks out a Giratina. So that's really, really good. And then you also have the super effective damage on Darkrai, regardless of the situation. So, you know, you're in a good spot there. And then we're running 1 Team Rocket Grunt. This does work in combination with Beedrill a little bit, but it also works with Meowscarada as well. If you can stop your opponent from having the amount of energies they need to attack, you can keep Meowscarada alive longer. Beedrill is pretty high HP, and of course, every turn, it is able to remove energy from your opponent's active Pokemon, and so this works just really well in tandem, and so I decided to have one little splash of that, but keep it so that both parts of the deck could feel happy and have cards to support them. So that's sort of kind of that. Again, this is a 2-stage evolution deck. The one thing about this deck, though, is that you could probably use this deck in Ultra Ball, and I would even assume you could use it in Master Ball. I think it's pretty damn good. It's a little bit inconsistent, and if you're at least in Master Ball, you're almost always running into EXs unless you're running into Meowscarada, right? So that's sort of kind of the positive to running Meowscarada, is that mirror matches you have Beedrill, that can kind of be like your high HP damage dealing Pokemon, and Rocky Helmet's going to be really useful for you. And in the other games, you know, Meowscarada is your ace and able to do different things. So that's sort of kind of why I like this deck the way it is. And the last deck that I want to talk about in terms of like mid-range decks is Rampardos, and we are going to be pairing it with Lucario. Of course, this is a 1 energy commitment for 130 damage. This does a million, right? The only thing you're weak to is Meowscarada. Meowscarada is typically weaker in this build because it only does 60 damage, and so it does 80 with super. So realistically, you're in a really good position to do a lot of damage, and your opponent isn't in the current meta for Rampardos, which is really, really nice. And of course, Head Smash, you know, does 50 recoil damage if you do knock out a Pokemon, but 130 is hidden like a truck, right? 150 is really good HP. And of course, the one downside to Rampardos, though, is the fact that you have find it through a fossil, right? So you're guaranteed to never lead with it, but you might have problems finding the fossil, right? So getting onto the deck for it, though, of course, we're rocking the tried and true Lucario build with it. You are playing one Sudowoodo splash into it. You could switch Sudowoodo with you can do a number of things, but honestly, you could switch Sudowoodo for Hitmonlee. You could even drop one Rampardos to add Hitmonlee in as well. There's just a number of things that you can do with the deck that will give it a lot of options. We're playing Lucario. Lucario basically gives you 20 extra damage for each Lucario on the field. This is absolutely massive. You know, the ability to add 40 extra damage to Rampardos doing 130 means you're hitting 170 uninterrupted, which does mean that 170 is knocking out Gallade, 170 is knocking out pretty much everything other than Charizard, Gyarados, Venusaur, right? Like nothing else survives that hit. So it puts you in a pretty good spot. The fact that you actually know that Gyarados is one of the few things that does live, it might actually be worth it to drop something for Hitmonlee, but I've chosen this. Obviously, when you're playing it in Master Ball tier or High Ultra Ball tier, the dog behind me doing I don't know what. But yeah, if you think that you're going to end up playing in Master Ball tier with this rather than like Great Ball or Ultra Ball, dropping a Rampardos or dropping Sudowoodo where you think you're going to fight less EXs, but honestly, I think you're running into EXs all the time, and I think just Sudowoodo does a million with Lucario as well. So, yeah, you can maybe drop one Rampardos for Hitmonlee, and then you're able to maybe have an option against Gyarados. Of course, the one issue with this deck is finding your Skull Fossil, but other than that, you're running 2 Pokeballs and a Communication. This is to help you find your Marshadow when you need it, your Riolus, your Sudowoodos, your whatever you need. 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, again, your offensive and defensive switching ability, and because you're running a fossil, Iono is super important in this to be able to reset your hand and potentially draw out that fossil that you need. Moving into basically the top 3 decks, though, Gyarados. We talked about Gyarados a little bit already. Gyarados is a massive, massive threat, 4 energy commitment, 180 HP. It has enough bulk that it lives through a lot of Pokemon, even using Red. It has a 140 attack that does knock out things without Cape. And it's a water deck, right? You have Misty, you have Irida, you have the best supporter cards in the game at your disposal that uniquely help Gyarados, right? So Gyarados also happens to be super effective against Charizard and basically is the faster version of Charizard effectively. And Raging Whirlpool also has the effects of Beedrill in a way where you get a coin flip on whether or not it takes away energy from you or from your opponent. So Can be extremely good. The one downside to Gyarados is, of course, Magikarp, but the deck is really, really strong. I've hedged a little bit on actually playing less of Misty and less of Irida in favor of Manaphy and having a secondary attacker in Palkia Origin form. Manaphy becomes your guaranteed energy accelerant. You slow build up a Gyarados and you slow build up a Palkia, and then Palkia comes in, you get the Manaphy knockout. Palkia comes in as another 1 energy or a 1 prizer while you still continue to build up that Gyarados, potentially even 2 of them, and then you have 2 Gyaradoses that can be absolute monsters for you late game. The Magikarp is the genetic Mythical Island one. The Mythical Island one basically has teleport for water types that allow you to switch out of the active. 2 Pokeballs, 1 communication, your standard search cards, 1 giant cape. The giant cape can be used on Giratina or Gyarados. If you get to 200 HP, you even survive. You're taking away your opponent's options, because bringing Gyarados to 200 HP completely changes the math on a lot of things that you're trying to do. And if you're putting it on Palkia, it gives you like a 120 kind of thing. And Manaphy also appreciates cape as well. But I'm actually rocking 2 Rocky helmets. This dissuade people from attacking Magikarp, but it also is used to give a punishment for knocking out your Manaphy, which sets up everything. So that's sort of kind of what I've chosen to go with. 2 Pokemon, 2 Professor's Research. We're only playing 1 Misty. Whether you play 1 or 2, realistically, you're trying to play it to get way more energy than what you had. Which makes it a little bit flexible. If you get it turn 1, it's still an option to have it. But if you get it late game, it's not really as valuable, where you already have a bunch. You're really just looking to set up a second Gyarados, potentially, just for like free. So that's sort of kind of what you can use it for. Early or late. In the middle, you want to be using your other cards, not Misty. 1 Sabrina. Most water decks running 2 Misty, 2 Irida cannot fit in a card to switch your opponent's card out. And so I think this is really good at preventing Druddigon from being a thing. We've seen a lot of the top decks really try to be avoiding Druddigon. That's why Hitmonlee ended up being popular for Gallade in the first place. So having a Misty or having a Sabrina that can push away a Druddigon just really dissuades anybody from really kind of doing anything with Druddigon, and you can now attack with Palkia for free or Gyarados to not take that chip. So 1 Irida, same thing as Erica with the Beedrill deck, with the Beedrill Meowscarada deck. If you have to play 2 Irida, you're probably losing. The biggest difference with Irida is that you heal 40 off of every Pokemon that has an energy attachment to it, which is really, really powerful. Potentially heals you way, way more than anything else. The nice part is for Manaphy too is that Manaphy only has 50 HP, and so even if you took 40 damage, you're healing back to full, and now you're at Cyrus range, so that's all kind of well and good. Then we're playing 2 reds in this deck. The red is basically used for the 160 HP. This does allow you to knock out Charizard from full with your super effective damage. This also, the 140 going up to 160, knocks out Arceus with Cape, knocks out Darkrai with Cape. And so you are good in that sense. So really, really think the Gyarados deck is really, really strong. And then I have 2 decks left for you. We have a 17 trainer Giratina deck that also features Mewtwo as the other card in it. But Giratina is really, really powerful. With Broken Space Bellow, you are able to energy accelerant for yourself. This accounts whether you're going first or second, but it does end your turn. So when you get this going first, it's fantastic. You get a free energy for it. And then when you're playing going second, you get 2 energies, but you end your turn. You weren't attacking anyways, right? You have 2 dead turns, and then when you're going second, you have 2 dead turns, and you're attacking for 130. When you're going first, you only have 1 real dead turn. And then yeah, so Giratina is very, very powerful. Obviously, it's weak to dark. tweak the thing that you pair it the most with. But overall, it's beating fighting type decks, and so it's really a threat to Gallade. And ultimately, this deck that we're running with the 17 trainers with Mewtwo is fully designed to the matchups end up skewing a little bit off, right? You trade a worse Weavile matchup for a little bit more even matchup against other things because Darkrai does have its weaknesses too. Mewtwo is another 150 Pokemon that can deal, or another Pokemon with high HP that can deal damage without losing energy or HP. And so that's really, really big. Early game, and then late game, of course, you still have a 150 attack, but you're not giving up 30 HP to do it. So Mewtwo ends up being a really, really valuable card in the deck. You're running 2 potions, you're running 2 capes, you're running a Rocky Helmet. Giratina always loves a cape. The 170 HP kind of keeps that a range of a lot of things. Even for Mewtwo, 170 is big. But you can always, we do have enough items that everybody gets one. So one will get a Rocky Helmet to do a little bit of chip damage. Very similar to the 18 trainer, you're still running 2 Pokeballs so you can get your other 2 Pokemon. We're running 1 Giovanni and 1 Red. This gives you flexibility of with Mewtwo to hit 160 and knock things out with the cape that way. Giratina at 140 will knock out things without cape. And then Red will allow you to knock out, 150 as like a 150 and 170 with different things as well, with Mewtwo and Giratina respectively. We're playing 1 Cyrus, 1 Sabrina. This again, your offensive and defensive switching tool. 1 Leaf lets you switch out. Both of these are 2 retreat costs. Dawn allows you to potentially set up a Mewtwo very quickly. You want to be doing this when you already have the 2 energy on so that you can surprise attack for 150. 1 Mars, very, very similar to all the other decks with 2 EX, with all EX lineups. Being able to knock your opponent down to just 1 Pokemon, just 1 card in their hand is very, very strong. This deck has the flexibility to run a Pokemon Center Lady, and so you're not worried about statuses. So that's sort of kind of this deck here. And then kind of moving on just right away to the Giratina Darkrai deck. This is the meta. This is the #1 deck used currently. The big thing with this deck is that we have seen a drop. They used to run Druddigon in this deck. As you can see, a lot of the decks that I showed and prepped for all were designed to really negate Druddigon lead. So a lot of people have ditched Druddigon altogether, and now they're just running Darkrai and Giratina. This is running a pure Dark energy deck where the Mewtwo deck was running Psychic. So effectively, you're slow playing a Giratina while you're building a Arceus or Darkrai and doing 20 chip damage. Again, same kind of trainer lineup: 2 potions, 2 capes, 1 Rocky Helmet. Same situation. You're running Sabrina, Cyrus, Mars, Pokemon Center Lady. This one actually rocks 2 Leafs and doesn't really care about the Dawn so much, just for more switching power. And then Red lets you get that maximum damage. So these are the 9 decks that I thought of that would help you in your game plan. Hopefully one of these decks helps you out. Like I said, this works for both the ladder, this works for tournament. I think for tournaments it's a little bit different, right? There are some decks that do a little bit better when you can know what your opponent's playing, and so having multiple options of a card is better than sometimes playing just 2 of a copy of a card. Like for example, it's actually better to have 1 Pokemon Center Lady and 1 potion, because now your opponent has to worry that you could heal, right? 1 Cyrus, 1 Sabrina kind of makes your opponent have to worry about both. Having a Red and a Giovanni makes your opponent have to worry about both. So there are situations where it's better in tournaments versus better in a ladder like this. But ultimately, let me know what you think about these 9 decks that I showed for you guys. Like I said, I'm going to be away for about a week, and then when I come back, there's going to be a new set dropping. So let me know what you guys think about the 9 decks. Let me know what you guys think about the next set. There's so many things to talk about. But when I come back, we might do like a recap of what's happening, maybe even like a prediction video for what we think is going to be coming. So be on the lookout for that probably in like 2 weeks time. But with that, I'm going to get up out of here. Thanks everyone for watching. Click like the video, subscribe if you really like it, and see you the next one.